I first saw them through the kitchen window. Two men in reflective vests stepping through my front gate like it was part of a public park. One carried a clipboard. The other had a phone out, already taking pictures of my barn. They didn't knock. By the time I reached the porch, they were halfway up the gravel drive, boots grinding into stone my father laid 20 years ago. I asked them what they thought they were doing. HOA compliance, the taller one said, like that answered everything. He flipped a page on his clipboard and started reading off violations. Unapproved fencing, agricultural structures, livestock visibility from the road. I let him finish. Then I asked a simple question. Show me where your HOA has jurisdiction over this parcel. They exchanged a look. The shorter one said the president had authorized enforcement. Fines would begin immediately. Legal action would follow if I didn't cooperate. What they didn't know, what I didn't bother explaining yet, was that this ranch existed long before their HOA did. The taller one slid a notice into my hand. We'll be back with enforcement. This land isn't something I picked up on a whim. My father bought the original 5 acres when I was 12. Back then, it was scrub grass and a leaning fence line. We built the barn together over 2 summers. Him measuring twice, me holding boards steady and learning the difference between doing something fast and doing it right. Every post in that structure carries a memory. When the subdivision started creeping toward us years later, I wasn't surprised. Developers follow pavement, so I bought the adjacent acreage as it came up for sale, not to expand, to protect, a buffer of pasture between my family and whatever rules might follow new construction. Technically, my driveway connects to the same county road the subdivision uses. That's as close as we get. No shared amenities, no common areas, no clubhouse, just asphalt in front of both our gates. I'm not anti-neighbor. I wave when people walk their dogs past the fence. I keep my fences straight and my property clean. What I don't tolerate is someone mistaking proximity for authority. The deed to this ranch was recorded long before the HOA existed. Their incorporation papers came years later. That detail mattered more than they realized. I met the HOA president a month before the vests showed up. She introduced herself at my gate with a firm handshake and the kind of smile that feels practiced. Recently elected, she told me, focused on raising standards, protecting property values. They'd making sure everyone pulled in the same direction. I remember thinking she sounded more like a campaign brochure than a neighbor. Within 2 weeks, certified mail started arriving, formal letterhead, bold headings. I was labeled non-compliant. My barn required architectural approval. My perimeter fence exceeded height guidelines. Livestock, according to her citation, were inconsistent with residential character. Residential character, I responded once, in writing. Calm, direct. I asked her to provide documentation showing my parcel had ever been annexed into the HOA's recorded covenants. Her reply came fast. Failure to comply would result in escalating fines. Unpaid fines could become liens. Liens could lead to foreclosure proceedings. It was written in clean legal formatting, the kind meant to intimidate without raising its voice. Up until then, I'd treated it like confusion. Maybe someone misread a map. Maybe she was new and overzealous. That's when I stopped assuming this was a misunderstanding. After the first visit, they stopped pretending it was courtesy. The men in vests came back 3 times in 2 weeks. Once in the early morning while I was mending a fence line. Once mid-afternoon when I was loading feed. The last time just before sunset, when light stretches long and makes everything look quieter than it is. They leaned over my fencing to photograph the horses. One of them stepped onto the lower pasture, testing the latch on a gate that stays locked for a reason. Another notice appeared taped to my barn door, edges flapping in the wind like it belonged there. I didn't raise my voice. I installed cameras, high resolution, date and timestamps visible, coverage of the gate, the drive, the barn, the pasture entry. I logged each visit in a notebook. Day, minute, what was said, where they walked. Then I sent a certified letter addressed to the president and the board. Clear language. Direct. Permission to enter my property was revoked effective immediately. Any further entry would be considered trespass. Their response came on official letterhead again. According to HOA bylaws, they claimed the association retained right of entry for compliance enforcement. I read that sentence twice. That week, I began pulling county plats and archived filings from the recorder's office. Quietly, methodically, I didn't share what I was finding. Not yet. Another envelope arrived days later. Fines were escalating. The matter would be referred to the HOA attorney if I continued non-compliance. The county recorder's office smells like paper and toner, the kind of place where arguments get settled quietly. I requested the original declaration of covenants for the subdivision, not the summary the HOA circulates to residents, the recorded document, the one stamped and indexed with parcel numbers attached. I sat at a wooden table and read every page. My parcel wasn't there. The legal description listed each lot by number, block, and phase. Mine wasn't included in the annexed properties, not in the original filing, not in any amendment that followed. I kept digging. 3 years after the HOA formed, there had been an attempt to expand its jurisdiction, an annexation proposal. Buried in the minutes was a requirement, unanimous written consent from all affected adjacent property owners, including me. There was no recorded consent bearing my name, no signature, no notarized instrument, nothing filed against my deed. I took copies and scheduled a consultation with a property attorney who'd handled boundary disputes before. He reviewed everything without theatrics, just slow, deliberate reading. When he finished, he leaned back and said, "You're not subject to their covenants. You're not a member. They have no jurisdiction over this parcel." He pointed to the bylaw they'd cited for right of entry. It applied specifically to member lots. I wasn't one. They weren't just overstepping, I said. He nodded once. They're asserting authority they don't have, fabricating it. I asked if we should respond immediately, demand retraction, threaten countersuit, force the issue into open conflict. He shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "If they're going to keep building a record, let them." So I waited. Another violation notice arrived a week later, this one citing continued refusal to comply. The vests returned once more, walking the fence line with exaggerated purpose. My cameras caught everything. Time stamps clear, gate latch rattling, one of them stepping 2 feet past the property marker. I added it to the file. My attorney drafted a formal cease and desist letter, detailed and precise. It cited the recorded covenants, the failed annexation, the absence of jurisdiction, and the documented entries after written revocation of access. It was ready to send, but he advised timing. "Let them reference enforcement publicly," he said. "It strengthens your position." So I attended the next HOA meeting. I didn't sit in the back. I sat along the side wall, hands folded, and listened. She ran the meeting with confidence, agenda structured, motions clean, tone authoritative. When my property came up, she didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. "Legal enforcement is pending," she told the room. "Non-compliant parcels will be addressed." There was a quiet murmur of approval. She spoke as if the outcome was inevitable, as if resistance was temporary. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I just listened. And then she made one mistake that night. At the next meeting, I signed in during open forum. When my name was called, I walked to the front with a thin folder and a small stack of certified copies. No raised voice, no theatrics, just paper. "I'd like to clarify jurisdiction," I said. I handed each board member a copy of the original recorded Declaration of Covenants, the annexation amendment, and the county plat map with my parcel highlighted. I gave them a moment to read the legal description. Then I read the annexation clause aloud. Unanimous written consent from all affected adjacent property owners, recorded with the county to be valid. I paused. "My signature does not appear anywhere in the public record," I said, "because I never gave it." I placed the certified search results on the table. No instrument filed against my deed. No membership status. No annexation. Next, I referenced the bylaw they'd cited for right of entry. I read the phrase, Member lots, directly from their own governing document. I am not a member. Finally, I described the documented entries after written revocation of access. I provided still images from the security footage, timestamps visible. I attached the certified letter revoking permission. My attorney's letter was last, calm language, direct conclusions. Continued entry could constitute civil liability and potential criminal trespass. The room changed. Chairs shifted. One board member stopped making eye contact with the president and began rereading the annexation clause. She tried to regain control, suggested further review, procedural delay, clarification by counsel. I nodded once and said it plainly. You don't have authority here. Cease and desist went out the next morning by certified mail. It didn't threaten, it documented. It demanded written acknowledgement that my parcel was not subject to the HOA's jurisdiction and that all violation notices be formally withdrawn from their records. Required confirmation that no lien activity had been initiated or would be pursued. 3 days later, their attorney responded. The tone was careful. Measured. He acknowledged receipt of the materials presented at the meeting and stated the board would review governance boundaries in light of newly clarified documentation. That phrase told me everything I needed to know. Within 2 weeks, I received written notice that all violations against my property were rescinded. No fines were owed. No enforcement actions pending. An internal review committee had been formed to examine annexation procedures. A month after that, the president resigned, citing personal reasons. No apology arrived. I didn't expect one. What mattered was simpler. The vests stopped coming. The letters stopped arriving. My gate stayed closed unless I opened it. I didn't file suit. I didn't push for damages. I wanted the boundary recognized, not revenge extracted. Authority, when it exists, lives in recorded paper, not volume, not confidence, not repetition. And on my land, the record was finally corrected. I've thought about it more than once since it ended. Authority without jurisdiction is just noise. It sounds official. It carries letterhead. Sometimes it even convinces a room. But if it isn't backed by recorded law, it's nothing more than volume. What stopped them wasn't anger. It wasn't threats. It wasn't some dramatic courtroom moment. It was paper, re-recorded covenants, filed plats, the absence of a signature that was legally required and never given. Calm documentation beats intimidation every time. You don't outshout bureaucracy. You out-prepare it. This was never about revenge. I didn't want damages. I didn't want headlines. I wanted the boundary respected. There's a difference. Some evenings now, I stand by the fence line as the sun drops behind the pasture. The horses settle. The gravel drive sits undisturbed. The gate stays closed unless I decide otherwise. No reflective vests. No notices flapping in the wind. No one testing the latch. They stopped coming, and they never had the right to be there in the first place.